Welcome back to another episode of Client Builder for Financial Advisors. My name is Brian Quaranta. I'm your host. And as always, the master, the Yoda, Larry Lewis. Larry, how are you?
Good, Brian. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. And boy, we have been going through a lot of stuff over the last few episodes. And one of the things that affects me more than anything is the need for approval. And
Wow.
I know it's a problem,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of people are have challenges with this. But
No, just you.
just me?
No, I'm kidding. It's
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that isn't plagued with some of it.
Seeking approval. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of your principles is all about seek respect, not approval. And you say it's better to be respected than liked. And that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. So why is it true in sales?
So, there's a lot of these adages out there that we've taken to heart. One is the customer's always right. One of the ones that I think gets in people's way is that this idea that people will only do business with people that know, like, and trust you. And it's that like part that I think is a problem. Now,
I mean, first off, that is said everywhere in the sales community.
I get it.
No, like, and trust is like staple.
And it's true. However, where the problem comes in is where the salesperson tries too hard to get someone to like them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact of the matter is that if you seek someone's respect, they will come to like you, okay? Because let's talk a little bit of DISC. You know what I mean when I talk DISC?
Yeah, like the
the
personality
personality
stuff. Yeah,
profile.
right.
High Ds tend not to care what other people think of them. Now, the I's care a great deal. So if you're a DI, which is what I believe you are.
I am a DI.
As well as I am.
Yep.
We have times where we can be very tough and kind of have a bit of an alligator skin on.
Yep.
And then there are times where we care way too much
Mm-hmm.
what other people think of us. And I think the problem stems from the fact that salespeople seek to get their emotional needs met by their clients. And I'll tell you who it plagues more than anybody else. It's entrepreneurs. It's small business people that spend more time on their business than anybody. I mean, my dad had an expression. He says an entrepreneur is somebody that would rather work 80 hours a week to avoid working 40 hours for somebody else.
That's so true.
And
Yeah.
So what happens is our lives get out of balance, okay? And every human being needs to have a support system, people in their life that care about them for who they are, okay? And typically that's our spouse, that's our husband or wife, that's our kids, although you'll understand this problem here when we start looking at it from the context of parenting, okay? To be a good advisor, to be effective not only at sales, but in rendering advice, you can't care whether or not somebody likes you.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are times in the course of selling when you have to ask really hard questions that could make your prospective client uncomfortable. And I want to give you an example of this here in a minute.
By the way, I've seen you do this in the conference room when you and I were working together and you were training me. I saw you ask questions that were making me cringe in my seat. And it was easy for you to ask these questions about how they make decisions and stuff that I had never learned to ask before. And watching a master like you do that, and watching you do it with such ease and the impact that it had on the prospect was incredible. Even pushing them on why they couldn't make a decision. It was absolutely fascinating to
Going
watch.
for the no.
Going for the no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's what's interesting. I may be a master at doing that with a prospect that I've never met before. Do you know where it becomes challenging for me?
Where?
Once that person has become a client, because I typically become friends with my clients.
You do.
So when it's a client now, I care whether they like me. And so I will be sometimes a little too cautious, maybe, in posing the difficult questions, or I might not be as effective at delivering bad news, giving constructive criticism. As a coach, as a trainer, I'm oftentimes working with the business owner or the VP of sales. Sometimes they're the problem, okay? But yet that's the guy that cuts my check, okay? And
Yeah.
so we have to have a clear advance agreement up front that, there's going to be times where I have to deliver bad news and I'm going to have to point the finger at you. I can either play nice and not be as effective, or I can risk hurting your feelings but be very effective. You pick. Everybody picks the latter because they've hired me for a reason. But I find that even myself, I'm cautious, I'm tentative in that situation because I do have a relationship with them. I do care about them. Now, I've found a number of different hacks around it, but I'll give you a good example. And this is with a young advisor. And I was listening to one of their sales calls, and this advisor needed to uncover pain. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the prospect that he's talking to. It was a divorced woman, recently divorced, who her life was a mess right now, okay? She's worried about how is she going to survive. She's worried about how is she going to she's worried about her kids because they're blindsided by this. She's angry with her ex-husband because he was having an affair. And she was the person that didn't manage the money in the relationship. And you oftentimes see that. You'll have a couple where one person tends to manage the money and the other person
You
doesn't.
see it often.
She desperately needed help.
Okay.
Now, she's meeting with the young advisor, and this advisor is asking her why she's there and finds out that her life's a mess right now. And when he came to that part of the sales process where he needed to drill down and get this person to admit their lack of knowledge about finances, their lack of understanding as to how they should manage their money, what they should do with their money in this divorce settlement, and she was in her 50s, so retirement was on the horizon for her. He didn't go very deep. He didn't ask the hard questions. And I listened to the sales call and I said to him, what happened here? He goes, what do you mean? I said, I suspect there's a lot of pain, but you really didn't drill down into it. You just kind of scratched the surface. And I get the sense that you avoided the whole diagnosis step. And he looked at me and he says, she's in so much pain. I just didn't want to make it any worse for her. Now, she's in a lot of pain. Some of it's financial, but part of it's just emotional. And I looked at this young advisor and I said, "Does she need the help of an advisor?" He goes, "Yeah, absolutely." I said, "Did you get the next appointment?" And he said, "No." I said, "Is she going to get your help, which she desperately needs?" And he goes, "No." I said, "So did you really help her by avoiding those tough questions?"
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "I get it."
Mm-hmm.
And I use that example because that's a situation where this young advisor didn't want to make things worse for this woman, in large part because he wanted this woman to like him. And he was afraid that if he asked those tough questions, that she wouldn't. That's a great example of how he didn't do his job. He
And is
need
that because she was already emotionally worked up about things that he didn't want to poke and prod at
Yeah,
the pain already?
he didn't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah, he didn't want to be the bad guy. Right, 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 right.
Now, I've been telling
But
us,
that would be like a patient having some type of pain internally within their organs or something, and the doctor not doing the job to find out more about that pain, even though it was already painful for the patient, right? I mean, I
okay,
hate to use
so
such a terrible analogy, but
it's a good
okay,
analogy, and let's talk about it in the context of what I went through last year.
yes,
Um, as you well know, I had a quadruple bypass.
right.
Now, I had a doctor. I'd had that doctor for a decade prior to going to a new
Mm-hmm.
doctor a year ago, December.
Mm-hmm.
And my old doctor was a good guy. Um, I have a problem with certain medicines, statins in particular. I had taken statins when I was 50 years old, lost my memory to the
Mm-hmm.
point where it was debilitating. So couldn't take statins again.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go see my primary care physician every year, and he'd look at my blood work and he'd say, "Well, cholesterol's super high." Yep. I said, "Well, I know you're not going to take a statin. Looks like you've lost some weight." "Yeah, I've lost some weight, working out now." "Oh, that's great. Well, keep up the good work." And I would go out of there feeling good. Okay. Little did I know that I was on the verge of needing heart surgery.
So he's appeasing you.
He's appeasing me.
Yes,
He's making me feel good about a situation that wasn't real good.
right.
Familiar
And
hyperlipidemia, cholesterol in the
is that
390s.
because you were difficult the times that you saw him before? Like, I don't believe in these medications. I've read up. I just don't. I don't believe in cholesterol and the way it works. Like, because I've had clients before,
Yeah.
right, say to me, "Well, I don't believe in annuities."
Okay.
Right? But in fact, I know the thing they need more than anything is an annuity because there's no protection on the downside whatsoever, and there's no consistent way to generate any income with the allocation of investments that he has. And what do? I do the annual review and I skip over and glaze over the whole annuity thing. And I might say something like this: "You're probably not going to want to talk to me about that annuity again this year, are you?" He's like, "No, Brian, you know how I feel about annuities." And so rather than drawing a line in the sand and being the professional, I avoid the conversation.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, I can't really psycho, I can't tell you what. You might have just been avoiding the confrontation, but I guess that's another way of saying you wanted to be liked.
I
Okay.
wanted to be liked.
And I guess let me counter that with an experience that I had 1 year after I saw that primary care physician. Um, I moved and I thought, um, maybe I should look at a doctor that's a little closer to home. So I went to a new doctor. This doctor never met me before, looks at my blood work. He's nervous about it. I tried to dissuade him from any further tests. I said, I'm not worried about it. I've done a lot of homework.
Mhm.
Cholesterol's not the
Mhm.
bugaboo they say it is. He
Mhm.
says, it may not be, Larry, but I'd like you to trust my judgment here. I've got 25 years worth of experience in which I've never seen a cholesterol level that high where there wasn't a problem. I want you to take another test. And he suggested a CT calcium score. I tried to dismiss it. Okay. He kept holding my feet to the fire to the point where I said, "You're not going to let this go, are you?" He says, "No,
Mhm.
I really want you to get
Mhm.
this test."
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's not covered by insurance. It's not a big deal, Larry. It's only
Mhm.
$120.
Mhm.
Okay, but still, is it really necessary?
Mhm.
And what did he do? Now, we live in the world where, doctors get ratings the same way that, dry cleaners and
Mhm.
restaurants do.
Right. Right.
I could have gone out there and said, pushy doctor, trying to get me to spend money on
Mhm.
things I'm not. But he was willing to risk all that.
Mhm.
He was willing to push the issue because he
He didn't care
doesn't
about being liked.
care if I like him or not.
Right.
He did the right thing.
Yes.
And so I said, okay, I'll do it. He said, do you promise me? Don't just tell me this to placate me. I said, no, I'm going to do it. I respect you. Those words actually came out of my mouth. I scheduled the CT calcium score within a week, and lo and behold, I had a record-breaking number. I mean, 4 times higher than what most people would consider a high score.
Widowmaker shit.
Widowmaker stuff. And find out, um, after that, I had to go in for another series of tests and didn't leave the hospital for 10 days because I had a quadruple bypass. Now, who's my hero? The guy that was my buddy that we'd laugh and joke every time I'd go in to see him, and he'd say, well, I know you have a problem with cholesterol, and you know it too, but you can't take statins, so, well, keep up the good work. And I'd go out there feeling good, or a guy that was willing to risk not being liked, held my feet to the
Yep.
fire,
Yep.
made me do something I didn't want to
Want to
do.
do.
The guy saved my life.
Yes.
I was, I mean, I look
You
back and
wouldn't be here. Matter of fact, you and I were supposed to be going on a skiing trip the next week.
it's exactly right.
And he told you, had you not done this, you would have went on that skiing trip and you would have never come back.
Well, the crazy part of it is the week that I was scheduled for the test is Kelly and I were going up to Seven Springs. I had rented a chalet up there for a week. It was her 60th birthday. This was my week to get ready for our ski trip. This was where I was really going to get in shape for our ski trip. And he tells me he wants me to come back the following Friday. And I said, can we do it the week after? Because I'm going to be skiing next week. And he looks at me and he says, you're not skiing next week. I said, serious? He says, yeah. I said, really? Yeah, no, you're coming in here for some tests.
All
And
right. So let's flip this for a minute.
okay,
So let's talk about my situation, right? You have a guy or a client, and with every ounce of your being that they need an annuity for income,
okay,
right? But they have their convictions about them. I hate them. I don't like them. My mom bought one. It didn't go well. She, whatever. But there's lots of different types.
exactly.
So let's talk about how to handle that.
Well, first of all, who knows more about annuities, you or your prospect?
I do.
Exactly. Like you said, there's lots of different types of annuities.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody said to you, I hate variable annuities. You would agree with them.
I would say I agree.
Yeah.
Yes, I do hate them.
But most people don't know that there are such a big variety of
Right.
annuities.
Right.
It's like saying, I hate pickup trucks. Well, maybe if you lived in downtown Pittsburgh,
Right.
yeah, and there's no place to park, you'd hate having a pickup truck because you can't find a place to park.
And there's lots of different makes and models of pickup trucks.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you drive like one of those little Ford Rangers or a Toyota Tacoma
Right.
or something like that. But by the same token, if you live out in the country and you happen to be a farmer, a pickup truck is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, it goes back to this one size doesn't fit all. You can't just claim all annuities are bad. Even Ken Fisher doesn't believe that. And he's the guy that's his advertising shtick.
Yeah, but by the way, he's one of the biggest investors and one of the largest annuity companies out there.
I know.
Which we'll leave for a different episode.
But everybody's had that experience with
Yes.
the person that hates annuities or
Yes.
and it's oftentimes because they had a variable annuity.
Yes.
So here's what happens. And I think, didn't we have a DM came in, a direct message where somebody posed this question?
Well, they did, and here's what they said. So maybe we could play this out a little bit in a role play. So prospects ask, "Do you sell annuities?" And the question is, how should an advisor respond? And more importantly, why should they respond this way?
Okay. So let me give you the simple answer, and then I'm going to give you an advanced answer. Okay. And the advanced answer came from you. Okay. Because I watched you do it to me.
I am pretty good at this.
You are pretty good at this. So here's what happens. People pose questions for a reason. Now, whenever we hear a question like this, what's the question again? Do you sell annuities?
Yeah. Do you sell annuities?
Okay.
And how should an advisor respond? And more importantly, why?
So when an advisor hears, do you sell annuities? I would venture to say that 95% of the time, it conjures up a bad experience they had in which somebody at either a seminar or in one of their appointments questioned them on annuities and then went off on them.
Yes.
Said, you guys are all the same. All you want to do is sell us an annuity.
Yep.
So
90% of advisors, the minute a question is asked about an annuity, they go automatically into defensive mode.
Exactly.
Yes.
Now, if I posed a variation of that question, such as, do you sell MIGAs? Okay. And I asked that of you. Would you assume that same objection?
No.
Why?
Because I believe in them.
You believe in them, and guess what? So do I.
Correct.
So if I'm posing the question, just because you know me, I mean, I probably have more annuities than your average client because I like annuities.
Yeah, you've got 4 of them.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
You've got 4 of them.
And so if I came to you, I says, do you sell MIGAs? Maybe I'm looking for the latest, greatest MIGA that I can buy to capture the interest rates that have been high as of late.
Right.
So you would immediately, if you didn't know me, you would respond negatively, or you would get defensive, thinking that I'm about to, lay into you because you sell annuities.
Right.
When in fact, I actually like them.
Yeah.
But you brought the objection with you.
Yes.
You bring the worst case scenario to mind, and that's what people
wow.
do.
Yeah. They're bringing the objection with them. They already know what the objection is. They're thinking to themselves, this guy thinks I just want to sell an annuity, that I'm just looking to make a high commission, I'm just an annuity salesman.
Yes.
Right. All this kind of stuff. All head trash.
All head trash.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the first mistake we make as an advisor. Is we bring this objection with us and we automatically go into defense mode. The second thing we do wrong is that we answer it.
Yeah.
And here's why that's a problem.
Right.
Oftentimes, the question your prospect asks is not the real question,
That's right.
okay? What matters most is why are they asking?
Yeah.
Because if we can turn that around
Right.
and we can find out why they're asking, number one, we'll find out that it's not the real question,
Yep.
okay? And number two, it's oftentimes the pathway to their pain. Let me give you another example of a question that um, advisors will oftentimes get. Um, they'll say to a young advisor, um, how long have you been in the business? The young advisor automatically panics
Yeah.
and thinks, oh, they don't trust
Yeah.
me. They
Yeah.
think that I'm, too inexperienced to handle their case. Um, and so they start to get defensive and they start to tell them how much experience they have, or they go overboard in trying to show their knowledge, which takes the focus off of the customer, puts it onto them. All of these things are counterproductive.
This was me in the beginning before I met you. I would answer every question that was asked. And now, I'm not going to spoil your thunder, but now I do what you teach. So let's talk about how we
Can we get to that in
go
just a minute?
ahead.
I
Go
want to
ahead.
give you an example I
Yep.
think most people relate to.
Yep.
So I had a client one time. It was a PR firm, and it was a weird set of circumstances in that the PR firm was working on trying to get the business of an organization I had just joined.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined that organization and got myself on the marketing committee. And I went to my first meeting and I found out that they were announcing the new PR firm that they had decided to go with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it wasn't my client.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked the committee, I said, I know I'm the new kid on the block here, guys, but who else did you interview? And they named 5 firms, one of which was my client.
Mm.
And I said, why didn't you pick that firm? I thought at best I can do a little bit of intelligence work here for my client, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, they're too big for us. And I said, I would think that bigger is better
Mm-hmm.
because they have more resources to throw
Mm-hmm.
at your account.
Mm-hmm.
And they says, well, Larry, what you don't realize is that the last firm we worked with was the largest PR firm in the city of Pittsburgh. They didn't service us very well.
Mm.
So
Oh, wow.
no, they made a faulty assumption.
Yep.
They assumed they were a small fish in the big firm's pond,
Mm-hmm.
and so they didn't get the attention deserved. The fact of the matter is they just probably had a bad account manager.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody dropped the ball over there.
Mm-hmm.
But now they have made this, broad brush assumption that all big firms are bad for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they went with a 5-person firm.
Mm-hmm.
My client's firm had 75 people working there,
Mm-hmm.
and they were proud of that fact. So I meet with my client about a week later, and I said, have you heard on whether you got the business for this organization? And she says, yeah, we did get word on that. We did not get it. I can't believe they went with this little 5-person firm. I says, I think I have a feeling as to why. I said, when you met with them, did they ever ask you how big you are? And she says, yeah, Larry, they asked us that right out of the gate. It was actually kind of surprising. We usually get that question, but it usually doesn't come up first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the owner who was pitching this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what did you tell him? He said, I told him, we're the 3rd largest in the city of Pittsburgh. And they started naming off all the marquee
Right.
clients, the
Yeah.
big clients.
Right.
And I said, do you know why they made the decision to go with the small firm? I said, I have no idea. Said they used to work with your competitor who was larger than you,
Yeah.
and they were underserved.
Yeah.
He said, so you're telling me that I shot myself in the foot 5 minutes into the appointment when they asked me how big the firm is. And here I am thinking I'm selling us
Yep.
when I'm killing the deal.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now,
Never asking why they're asking the question.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so he assumed that the right answer was we're big. But the fact of the matter, that wasn't their question. Their question was,
Right.
if we hire you, are you going to give us the level of service that we're hoping for? Well,
Mhm.
nobody's going to ask that question because they can't trust the answer.
Right, right, right. So they're gonna say, "How big are you?"
So they come up with some kind of subterfuge. How big are you?
And
Now, here's the worst part of it, though. So, number one, they answered the wrong question and they actually killed the sale.
okay.
If they had turned it around, if they had asked what I call a Socratic question, Socratic question is the means of uncovering the why,
Mhm.
the intent of the question as opposed to the
Mhm.
content.
Mhm.
What they would have found out is that the reason they asked is they'd had a bad experience
Mhm.
with the bigger firm. That's the pathway to their pain. Now,
Mhm.
then, when they got into talking about the
Mhm.
service model, this PR firm could have explained how they do things differently than their other competitor. It would have been a completely different dialogue. Okay.
Mhm.
So here's the simple answer. The simple answer is that when someone poses a question to you, use what I call a softening statement. Say to them,
This is brilliant, by the way. Listen to this very closely. This changed my practice. One simple strategy like this changed my practice. Go ahead.
so when they ask you, do you sell annuities? Said, I appreciate the question, but you brought that up for a reason.
Mhm.
What made you ask?
Mm.
Now, what they're going to find is that the little voice inside their head, first of all, they says, mom's voice pops up again and says, you asked a good question, son.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, feel good for that.
Right. Yeah.
And then they say, you need to elaborate on the question.
Yeah.
And so then they ask the question in a slightly different way, and you start to realize that, oh, there's a different question being asked here.
Yeah.
And now you can handle that question differently.
Yes.
Now, let's go to how you did it, which
Yes.
was the master version of
Yeah.
this. Um, and gosh, I got to remember how you said it. Oh, you asked me, you started by doing the standard textbook
Mhm.
um, Socratic question. It says,
Mhm.
appreciate you bringing that up, Larry. That's something I wanted to talk to you about here today.
Mhm.
But what made you bring that up?
Mhm.
And I don't know if you recall this, but I said to you, well, I had an annuity once. It was a variable annuity.
Mhm.
I said, and you kind of winced.
Mhm.
I said, are they bad? He said, yeah, they're loaded with fees. I
Mhm.
mean, did it work for you?
Mm.
And I said, no, I actually sold it after,
Mhm.
2 years. It was a problem and I lost money on it. And I said, not unusual. And then you said to me, so based on that, what are your feelings about annuities?
Hmm.
And I said, well, to be honest, I've heard they're bad, but I guess I don't know enough about annuities.
Right.
And here's what you said to me, which I thought was brilliant. Well, all annuities are not the same.
Mhm.
Suppose, and this was the master thing. Suppose I had an investment
Mhm.
that could only grow,
Mhm.
that never lost money,
Mhm.
that gave you enough liquidity that in any given year you could take as much 10 as
Mhm.
10% out of that annuity.
Mhm.
And that annuity is guaranteed to earn at least 3% a year,
Mhm.
but could be as high as 6 or 7%.
Mhm.
I said, I'd say to you, it sounds too good to be true.
Mhm.
He said, okay, then we're going to need to have to spend some time explaining how certain annuities work. And I said, do you actually have an investment that does that?
Mhm.
I said, I do. And I said, for real? I said, what's it called? And you said, well, it's called a fixed indexed annuity. And I'm like, wow. And I remember, and I don't know if you remember this, but I immediately, I mean, you brought that up in our first appointment
Yep.
while you were
Yep.
uncovering pain.
Yep.
Okay. You're thinking that an annuity would make sense based on what I had told you,
Mm-hmm.
was that I was tired of losing money. I
Mm-hmm.
take enough risk as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I want to do is take more risk with my retirement money. In other words, once I've made my money, I want to keep it. Okay.
And it's never about the question. It's about the question behind the question that we're always trying to dig deeper on. And what somebody has had an experience that might not have been great, like Larry did, you have to find out the question behind the question, but then you have to take what Larry calls a little bit of a stutter step to where we now need to go into a place to where we start to educate before we can even initiate the sales process. And if you think that this is good, that what we're talking about here today is life-changing for your business, you wait as we continue to get into more and more detail, because we are just scratching the surface with Client Builder. And if you haven't gotten a copy of his book yet, you got to go to Amazon, get a copy of it, read it, because just reading it alone will absolutely change your life. And I will say this, when I met Larry, I was at $12 million of production. And today, by the way, what year was that we met?
10 years ago?
10 years ago. And today we're at over 200 million, of which 70% of that is annuity business. And so we'll teach you how to do it. Keep coming back to these podcasts. Like and subscribe if you're watching it on YouTube. But come back next week, because we got more information to help you improve your practices and get you to a place to where you're mastering the sales game.